I have never beaten Terraria on my own before, so I challenged myself. Can I beat Terraria Expert Mode in only 100 days? Enjoy the video. So first, I created my character, and I named him That Guy, because I wanted to be that guy who beats Terraria. I also went with just random, like hair and clothing and everything. And then I also went with a expert mode world, as the title suggests. And then I also made it a large world because, I don't know, that seemed fun. And then I went with a random corruption, and it ended up being Crimson, which I'm actually quite glad about because I've never done Crimson before. And so, it'd be cool if I tried something new. And so here we are, day one. I started out by cutting down trees. I made a quick shack, some wooden armor, and a wooden sword, and then I immediately started exploring the caves where I bravely fought cave enemies and I almost died. But the suffering and the bravely fighting wasn't for nothing. I found a bunch of ores, which I promptly mined, as well as 2 underground houses. One gave me a band of regeneration, which, as the name implies, slowly regenerates my health. And then I also found a magic mirror, which can teleport me to spawn if I want to. I also found a mushroom biome, but, past self, I don't know if that was the best place to stand, but, you do you, I guess. When I respawned, I opened some presents, and so I was recording this before Christmas, and so mobs have a chance to drop presents when you're recording, I don't know, the few weeks before Christmas, I think. And so I got a few, and I opened them, and one of them gave me an OP grappling hook, which I was really excited about, because it's so nice to have a grappling hook early on. And then I also got some candy cane blocks from them, which I would use later. And so then I proceeded to expand my base because I felt like it was looking a little bit small. And I also used the candy cane blocks for the roof and floor. I didn't really know if I liked it at the time, but I kind of just moved on because I just wanted to think on it for a little bit. I crafted some full lead armor and a tungsten sword, and then I went to the caves again. I was able to explore the mushroom biome, and I got a life crystal and a bunch of ores. I continued exploring into day 3, where I found a cloud in the bottle, which I really love having, because it gives me a double jump, which I'm so bad at moving around without this. And then I sorted my storage for the rest of the day, because my inventory was starting to look a little bit messy. Oh yeah, and I was also able to make a watch, which is really helpful for recording, because it makes it a lot easier to keep track of the days. On day 4, I did a bit of base improvement, and then I started work on a elevator, which is a elevator that goes to hell, as, again, the name implies. Oh yeah, and I would like to mention something real quick. So sometimes you might see that the footage goes fuzzy for a second, and so I record by streaming, and I believe that this is because the stream loves Terraria and loves this series so much that sometimes it just has to show its love and excitement by making the screen go fuzzy. And I know it can be a little bit annoying at times, but the stream can't help it, so don't blame the stream. Anyway, on day 5, I decided that I didn't really like the candy cane on the floor of my base, so I decided to change the floor to lead bricks, and then I also made 2 houses under my base, one for the merchant and one for the guide. I also made a simple underground house for the demolitionist, but then the nurse moved in, which was not ideal, because I didn't know how to move NPC housing at the time, and so I was just like, well, that's awkward, now what do I do? So I decided to just explore to the left a little bit, and I found some living trees, which happened to be right next to the Crimson. The next day, a traveling merchant came, and I bought some very unnecessary vanity clothing from him, as well as some red platforms, which I didn't need either. I don't know why I did. I just did it because I could, I guess. And then I decided to make an arena to fight the Eye of Cthulhu, which is the first boss on our list. And once I was finished with that, I made the roof to our house look a little bit better. And then I also made a house for the nurse right next to our arena. I didn't know how to get it there, or get her there yet, but if I could get her there, then I could use her to heal myself during boss battles. On day 7, the demolitionist came, but I couldn't figure out how to switch the demolitionist and the nurse's housing, because right now the demolitionist was in the nurse's house, and the nurse was in the demolitionist house, and I tried for a little bit, but I just I couldn't figure it out. I even looked up some tutorials. Nope, I don't know, I didn't know what it was, and eventually I gave up, and I decided to work on my elevator, to which I promptly died to a glow squid, and then I died to another one, but I was able to get some ores from it, and at the end of the day, I was able to craft full tungsten armor. The next day, I decided to explore a little bit to the right of my world. I made it to the jungle, but I didn't really last there long. For the rest of day 8 through 13, I worked on the elevator and exploring mines. Looking back at this, this was very inefficient. 1, because I kept dying, and number 2, because I didn't use splunkers. I don't think I realized how OP they were. I knew they existed, and I think I even had some, but I just didn't use them, and so it took a while. But eventually, I was able to get the Blood Butcher from all the Crimtane ore I mined, and I also found life crystals as well as Hermes boots, which would make me be able to run faster. On day 13, I realized that I probably spent way too much time mining, because I was over 1/10 of the way through the game, or through my time, I guess, and I still hadn't fought a boss yet. So I decided to fight Eye of Cthulhu, and so I spawned it that night, the night of day 13. I was a little bit clumsy, and there were some close calls, but I did end up winning. And I was stoked about this. This was so exciting to me because I think this is probably the first time that I beat Eye of Cthulhu on my first try, and I don't know, it was just really cool to me. The next day, I continued work on my elevator, and I was able to find a lot of much-needed life crystals, which is nice. On day 15, I wanted to make some more NPC houses, because I knew some more could spawn in. I just didn't have houses for them, but I didn't really have any ideas, so I figured I might as well just make a Christmas tree, because I was actually recording day 15 on Christmas, and so I started work on a Christmas tree house, but I didn't really have enough Christmas tree blocks. Those I got from presents, and I hadn't gotten that many presents yet because it was still kind of early in the series, so I decided to just tear it down because it was looking kind of weird. After that, I decided to try and take care of my NPC situation and try and move the demolitionist to its correct spot, and I was actually doing a lot of looking around, and I realized that there wasn't even a button for it. Like in control bindings, there's literally just no button connected to it. So I think that was the problem the whole time. So once I figured that out, I could solve the problem pretty quickly. The next day, I continued exploring the caves and working on my elevator. I was looking for life crystals because I still needed quite a bit to get full life. And then I also was looking for gold because I only need leggings left for full gold armor. On day 17, I reached hell, but I decided not to explore it because the enemies were far too strong for me at this point. On day 18, I decided it was probably time that I start getting ready for the Brain of Cthulhu, which would be the next boss on our hit list. And so I went to the Crimson, and I explored a few hearts. None of them gave me anything that was very useful. So I started work on an arena for the Brain, but I didn't feel like I was very ready for the fight, so I decided to keep caving. I ended up going to the underground desert where 1, I died a lot, but 2, I found the Thunderbolt, which is a magic weapon that I didn't even know existed, but I thought maybe it would be cool to use against the Brain. I was also looking for an extractinator in the underground desert because it would be useful for my future main base if I could find one, but I didn't end up finding one. The next day, I used a few teleportation potions, and one of them sent me to one of the other Crimson biomes, and I figured since I probably wasn't going to come back here anytime soon, I might as well try and fight the Brain here. So I made a quick arena for it, and then I spawned it. I did fine in the first phase, because I had Jester's arrows, which work well against the Brain's first phase, but then I kind of struggled in the second phase. I did get enough tissue samples from the first phase, though, to get a pickaxe, which I crafted right afterward. Looking back, if I had made another house, the arms dealer would have moved in, which I could have bought a mini shark from, which would have helped a lot with the second phase, but I didn't for some reason. Even though I technically didn't even have to defeat the Brain, since I already had the pickaxe, I decided to fight it again on day 20. I did even worse than the first time. The first time I didn't have all my buffs, and the second time I did, but I did worse. The next day I fought it 2 more times, and one of them I was able to get to the second phase, but the other one I wasn't even able to get to the second phase, which is very discouraging to me. Side note, at the end of day 21, I was exploring the left side of my world, and I was in the snow biome when deer clops randomly spawned. this was really surprising to me because I didn't even know that Deerclops existed, let alone how it spawned. But I did try and do my best against it, but I was no match for it, and I died. On day 22, I decided to take a break from trying to defeat the brain to explore the jungle to see if there's anything that could help me against this boss, and I was also running out of buff potions. And at this point, I finally started using Splunker potions, finally! And I realized how OP they were, and I found 2 life crystals with them. Also, at this point, I realized that the goblin invasion hadn't come yet, which was kind of annoying, because the requirements for a goblin invasion to come is breaking a heart, which I had done quite a while ago, and I need the goblin invasion to get the goblin tinkerer, which sells some items, which would have been really helpful. On day 23, I did some research off camera, and I figured out how to craft potions, which I didn't even really realize you could do before this. And I had some of the materials for Splunker potions, so I crafted a few, and then I used some teleportation potions to find life crystals. I also kind of got distracted when I ended up teleporting to the beach, one of the beaches, and I ended up making a beach house for the angler. The next day, I realized that if I made an herb farm, then it would be a lot easier to craft potions, because then I wouldn't have to go searching around the whole entire world just for one specific ingredient for a potion. So I made a quick herb farm and put some of the seeds that I already had into it. And I actually tended to this farm almost every day of this series. But I'm not going to mention it every day of this series because it's going to get old to mention it every day. But just know that almost every day I'm tending to this herb farm. I also bought a forest pylon for my main base, which I knew if I could get other pylons for other biomes, then I could teleport around the world. That night, I fought the Eye of Cthulhu for money to buy bombs because I was running out of bombs. And also to keep my spirits up because I was kind of getting frustrated about the brain. And also to practice dodging because dodging is cool and it's useful for fighting bosses. I was also still annoyed at this point that the that the goblin army hadn't come yet because I really liked having rocket boots, which can only be bought from the goblin tinkerer. On day 25, I realized that we are already a fourth of the way through the series, so I decided I was either going to defeat the brain today or I just needed to move on. I started out the day by using some teleportation potions to look for life crystals. I didn't end up finding any, but I did find a bat statue, which gives the player 5 extra defense when they're near it, so that would be useful for the brain. And so, at the end of the day, I drank all my buffs. I placed the bat statue, and I summoned the brain. And I'm going to let you feel as nervous as I was, and watch the entire fight, just to find out how I did. Oh yeah! Who did it? I did. Who did it? I did. Who's cool? I am. truly accurate representation of what I was like after the boss fight. Yeah. And this, folks, is why I play Terraria. I think because a lot of the bosses seem so daunting before I fight them, because I've either never beaten them or only beaten them with the help of friends who are a lot more experienced than me. It just feels so insane when I defeat them, because I never thought I could do it. It seemed so daunting, but I did it. I was able to do it. Anyway, after the fight, I went home victorious. I crafted the full armor. I was feeling good. And I also put on the Brain of Cthulhu accessory, even though it's not all that good. But I didn't care, because I did it. The next day, I decided to make some cavern houses, because then, if I put a pylon there, then both some of my villagers would be happier, so they'd give me better prices, and if I put it near hell, then I could get to hell pretty easily if I just teleport to the pylon. On day 27, I went up to get some building materials, and I realized slime was raining from the sky. I hadn't killed King Slime yet, so I killed enough slimes to spawn him, and I killed him. The only thing useful from him, though, was a slime mouth, but I didn't care. After that, I kept working on my cavern houses, and by the end of day 28, not 20 happy, 20. You see that sometimes when I read my script, I end up reading a little bit too far ahead. This happens also when I'm streaming and I'm reading chat. Okay, this is reading it correctly. By the end of day 28, I was pretty decently happy with them, so I placed a pylon there. Then I decided to try and look for fire blossoms in hell, because that was an herb that I didn't have seeds for yet, and they were used for some potions that would be extremely useful. So I tried to find them, and I died almost immediately. How wonderful. Then when I respawned, I realized that I hadn't used any gravitation potions yet, so I decided to use some, since you could get some pretty good stuff from the houses that are on floating islands, but I didn't end up finding any floating houses. I only found lakes. On day 30, the Goblin Army finally came! Yes! 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 And I only died once, which is pretty good for me, since usually in past worlds I've died like 50 times to the Goblin Army. On day 31, I started work on some jungle houses, because I decided it would be pretty useful to have a jungle pylon. I did get interrupted by a blood moon, though, which I was actually kind of happy about, because I hadn't collected that much deathweed yet, which was used for potions, and deathweed could only be collected during a blood moon and a full moon. Also, during the blood moon, King Slime spawned, and unfortunately, I died to it. We'll say it's because I kept running into blood moon enemies. Yep, that's what we'll say. And the next day, it started raining. So I decided to collect some water leaves, because I didn't have that many, and they are useful for potions, and they can only be collected while it's raining. I spent the rest of the day after that working on the jungle houses, and by the end of the day, I'd finished them, and I was pretty happy with them. Although, looking back, I don't know if they are the best. At least I was happy with them at the time. On day 23, I realized that a meteorite had landed near my jungle base, so I collected some meteorite real quick, and then went home to craft the star cannon, which I plan to use for some future bosses. Once I made the star cannon, I spent the rest of the day getting herbs? I'm gonna say this for the rest of the video. Herbs or herbs. To craft obsidian skin potions, which makes you immune to lava. The next day, I used the 2 obsidian skin potions I had just crafted, and I mined tons of hellstone. I basically mined until the potions were out, and I ended up getting 154 hellstone bars, which was more than enough for full armor and tools. So I crafted full armor, full tools, and then I crafted the rest into hellfire arrows, which basically means that they're arrows that explode on impact, which is cool, because it does more damage. Then, at the end of day 34, I decided to try and find a beehive, so then I could challenge Queen Bee. I didn't end up finding one, but I accidentally spawned her too early, so that means I kind of just ended up being stuck in honey the whole fight. I did end up getting her halfway, but I did die. The next day, I realized how easy it was to craft Queen Bee spawns. It was literally like 5 honey, 5 hive blocks and a stinger or something. I think there was one more thing, but basically that easy. So I crafted like 7. Then, of course, the goblin army interrupted me, but I dealt with it quickly this time because I had good armor. And then I spent the rest of the day making an arena for Queen Bee. Once the arena was finished, I spawned Queen Bee, and I died the first 2 times to her. And this actually made me really frustrated for some reason, more than almost any of the other bosses. Actually, well, Brain maybe also got it close to this point, as well as one boss in the future. But basically, I thought that almost everyone fought Queen Bee before Skeletron, and looking back, I realized that a lot of people either don't even fight Queen Bee at all, or fight her after Skeletron. And so, for some reason, I thought I should be able to fight, or beat Queen Bee easily, and I wasn't. So, I don't know, that felt disappointing to me. But anyway, the next day, I fought her 5 more times, 3 of which I won. And I think, actually, looking back, there was another problem. I was, like, during the fights, debating whether to use my sword or my bow. So a lot of times, I was kind of indecisive. And so sometimes I ended up just taking unnecessary hits because I was indecisive. Also, I realized that the missing health I had probably wasn't helping. And that I also wanted rocket boots, so I decided to explore the jungle to try and get them 2 in 1. The Tinkerer had a chance to spawn in caves, and I could buy rocket boots from him. And then also the jungle generates life crystals more often than other caves. And so I was able to find all the life crystals I needed, but I wasn't able to find the Tinkerer. It actually showed up a bunch of times on my lifeform analyzer, but I was never able to find it for some reason. And then I also found an extractinator finally, which was so nice. And that night I used a bunch of fossils that were just sitting around on the extractinator, and I got a bunch of amethyst, which I would be using for my future base. On day 38, I continued exploring to try and find the Goblin Tinkerer, but again, I couldn't find him, even though it kept showing up on my lifeform analyzer. I did find a marble biome though, which was kind of useful because I really like the look of marble blocks, so I bombed some of it to get them. By day 39, I was kind of getting tired of mining, so I decided to use some gravitation potions since I hadn't completely explored the skies yet. The only thing useful that I got out of it was a red balloon though, which lets me jump higher. Once my gravitation potions were out, I decided that I wanted to make some snow houses because I wanted a snow pylon. I spent the rest of day 39 and most of day 40 building. By the end of day 40, I decided to look for some ice skates since I would need them for Terra Spark boots, and they're found in ice chests in underground. I found them on day 40, and I spent the rest of day 40 finishing off the snow house. The next day, I made an arena for a Skeletron, and then I also made a new house at the beach for the party girl. I didn't really feel confident fighting Skeletron at this time though, because I didn't have rocket boots, which would allow me to get away from his attacks a lot easier. And so I spent 43 trying to find the Goblin Tinkerer. Again, it kept showing up on my lifeform analyzer, and I kept not being able to find him. Oh, and also, earlier in day 43, King Slime spawned out of the blue. And, yeah, we don't speak about this ever. Never again. The next day, I looked it up, and I realized that the Goblin Tinkerer can only be found in the cavern layers, not the underground layers, where I had been searching for him half the time, which would have been really helpful to know 3 days ago. But with this newfound knowledge, I was able to find him fairly quickly on day 44, and I bought his rocket boots as well as the Tinkerer's workshop, which would allow me to combine accessories. I spent the morning of day 45 reforging a lot of my accessories and weapons to get some better modifiers, and I also spent a lot of the morning deciding what accessories I should use. And finally, that night, I summoned Skeletron for the first time in this world. No! I think actually one of the biggest things that got me in this fight was I just wasn't used to his attack patterns. And actually, funnily enough, an accessory that wasn't helping me at all was the cloud and the balloon, because if I use both the cloud and the balloon and my rocket boots, it would mean that I'd take fall damage when I got all the way down. I would go that high. And also, I wouldn't end up using the rocket boots because the cloud in the bottle goes first. It gives you a double jump. But I'm not used to pressing A twice to use my full going up power. And so I ended up a lot of times just using cloud and the balloon. And so I kind of didn't really dodge that well. The next day, while I was waiting for night to fall so I could fight Skeletron again, I decided to explore hell a little bit. I smashed a bunch of pots there, which, funnily enough, gave me a bunch of potions, which I didn't even realize it would do. And then I also marked all the chests that I could find. At the moment, I couldn't open the chests because I needed a shadow key, which would require getting it from a dungeon chest, which would require me killing Skeletron to get into the dungeon. Anyway, that night, I spawned Skeletron. Again. There are a few close calls, but I did it. I'm that cool. Oh yeah, I can do it. And I was actually super excited after this battle because I have never, before this video, defeated Skeletron on my own. So this, at this point, is getting into the realm of stuff that I've never gotten to before on my own. Anyway, immediately after killing I can talk, guys. I know I can. I've got a mouth, and I can use it, okay? Are you ready? Immediately after killing Skeletron, I explored the dungeon, guys. I did it. I can speak. Anyway, very quickly, I was able to find a shadow key and a cobalt shield. And once I found those two things, I didn't really feel like I needed to get anything else from the dungeon. And on day 47, big difference there, I headed down to hell to open all of the marked shadow chests that I had marked earlier. And I got a Hellwing bow, which is basically a bow that when using normal arrows, it shoots bats. I also found a Flame Lash, which is a pretty nice magic weapon that has, what is it called? Targeting? Is that what it's called? And then I also found a Dark Lance, which is an upgrade to my sword. After this, I was in my main base, and I was thinking, you know, maybe it's time that I make my main base, because a lot of my storage had actually started overflowing into this underground part, as well as a bunch of my crafting, what was it called? Workbenches, is that what they're called? Crafting benches. I can think. I can do it. So, I started flattening out land in the desert for my main base because I figured, I don't know, I hadn't made a desert village yet, and why not? And I also got a lot of sand from one of the beaches by blowing it up. So now one of the beaches doesn't look all that hot, but oh well, at least one of them will look fine. Also, around about this time, I repeatedly committed not living several times. And you might be like, well, why? What were you doing that for? It's because I needed my my gravestones to make a graveyard. And I thought that if I put the Dryad in a graveyard, then maybe she would sell the corrupt seeds. I don't know where I got that from, but I got it from somewhere. And so I did, but she didn't sell the corruption seeds, which was mildly annoying. And you might be asking, why do I need corruption seeds in the first place? Well, I wanted some of the Ebonstone, is that how you say it? Ebonstone brick for my base, because I had done some research off camera of what blocks I wanted to use, and unfortunately, since the Dryads didn't sell it, I went to another world. I didn't want to have to do this, but I went to a world that I've never really used before, and I basically just got some vile mushrooms, as well as a little bit of ebon stone with bombs, voice crack, and then I headed back to my main world. When I got back to my main world, I decided that I should section off a piece of land to spread corruption on, so that way when I had finished on some of my base, then I could come back and some of the corruption would have spreaded and I could have mined some ebonstone. In foresight, I probably should have sectioned off more land, but oh well. Once that was finished, I finally started work on my main base. My idea was to have like one main pillar, not main pillar, like kind of almost tower, but not that tall, and then to have a bunch of other rooms like kind of jutting off from it. That's a weird way of phrasing it, but basically I wanted to have one main tower, and then I was gonna use amethyst gem spark blocks for the inside of the walls, and then sandstone brick blocks for the outside of the walls. Don't ask how I came up with this, but I don't know. I was fiddling around in another world, and I was like, those look pretty cool together. And then also, I was going to use ebonstone brick wall for the background, as well as some glass. And actually, at this point, we haven't seen our stream get that excited. Actually, on the first day, it got kind of excited, but I didn't show much of that. But I think while I was working on my base, it just got really inspired. And so it kind of just went all fuzzy for a little bit. Anyway, I continued work on the base until day 54 when I ran out of gem spark blocks, unfortunately. So I spent the rest of the day 54 working on the storage for the base as well as the crafting area. On day 55, I decided it was probably time to make an arena for the Wall of Flesh. And actually, I did a lot of research for the Wall of Flesh. I don't know, I think it was maybe the boss that I was most nervous for. Anyway, I decided that I would use rails on my arena, because then you can go a lot faster, which is actually kind of smart. I don't know why I haven't seen other YouTubers do that, but maybe because they weren't nervous for the Wall of Flesh. I guess that shows you something. Anyway, I continued working on the arena until day 58 when a goblin army invaded and interrupted me. But at least now I have OP gear, so I defeated it pretty quickly. And then I decided to try and find the shimmer, because I'd never seen it before, first of all. And then also, it could turn topaz into amethyst, and I had like 70 topaz, and I was out of amethyst, and I was like, that would be really, really helpful. Unfortunately, though, I dug down pretty deep and I couldn't find it. I knew that it could be a little bit farther to left, like, not really just below the beach, but I got discouraged and I went home. And on day 59, another goblin army invaded, which was mildly annoying, but again, I could defeat it pretty quickly. And then I decided to get some fossils real quick before I fought the Wall of Flesh, because I knew that the desert would get a lot harder once it turned hard mode, and I wanted to make sure that I had some supply of amethyst before I went into hard mode. Next day, I prepared the Wall of Flesh arena with campfires, bath statues, heart lanterns, and more. I also got a demon scythe while I was down there, which is a really useful mage weapon. I'm so glad I got it, because it pierces through enemies, which is really useful for the hungry that the Wall of Flesh has. And then while I was down there, I expanded the arena a smidge. The next day, I fought Queen Bee for some more bee nades, because those are really useful against the Wall of Flesh. And I decided that my strat was going to be, first, use the bee nades to try and get rid of the hungry and do some damage. Then I would use the demon scythe to do some damage and maybe get it to around, like, halfway to a third. And then I would finally finish him off with the star cannon, which I had been collecting stars for the whole entire series, basically. And so, I spawned him. And actually, my first reaction was easy. I think looking back that I was really over-prepared for this. I prepared for this for like 5 to 10 days, which I really did not need to do. And actually, on day 62, which was the next day, I got a jolt of, wow, we're already almost 2/3 the way through the series, and I'm only in hard mode, or only just got in hard mode. So I started to try and pick up the pace, although it seems that Terraria had other plans. Anyway, when I got it out of hell after defeating the Wall of Flesh, I realized that 1, the cavern houses that I had made had been corrupted, and then 2, my main base had been, I guess not corrupted, crimsonified, I'll say. But, which meant that it was going to be really hard for me to use my main base at this time. Really annoying. So I decided before it got any worse that I should probably section off a bunch of the crimson so that way it doesn't get too out of hand. And so I spent day 62 and 63 sectioning off the crimson. While I was at it, I also broke some altars so that way I could get some of the hard mode ores. I got a blessed apple mount from a unicorn while I was traveling in the hollow. And then also, I died a lot. I don't know why that was my 3rd bullet point, but whatever. It works. On day 64, I was kind of getting tired of sectioning off the crimson, so I took a break to make some temporary houses at the ugly beach. I like how I put in the script that it's ugly. So that way I could get the demolitionist to get some more bombs. And then I went back to sectioning off the crimson, and I finished by day 65. or at least finished by my standards. And that night, I decided to fight a bunch of eyes because I had some eyes sitting down. They were sitting they were sitting down in my chest. That's just like, what does that even mean? Anyway, point being, I fought a bunch of eyes to keep my spirits up after that grueling sectioning off crimson run. And it was really satisfying, and it actually got me a lot more money than I thought. It got me like a full platinum coin. Jeez. The next day was day 66, which was officially 2/3 the way through the series, which kind of scared me. So, right as the day started, I grabbed my spunker potions and I headed down to the caves to get some hard mode ores. And I only bothered getting the pickaxes because we're already 2/3 the way through, and I gotta hurry. But unfortunately, the game had other ideas, and the very next day, slime was falling from the sky, and I kind of needed gel, so I got distracted for a bit, which I shouldn't have done, but oh well. Fine, at least I got some gel. And then, for the rest of the day, I continued mining. And then on day 68, I got interrupted again, but this time it wasn't the measly slimes falling from the sky. It was the dastardly pirates. The dastardly pirates. So, yeah, I was kind of forced to just kind of stand on the top of my base and use my flame lash, which did like barely any damage to them. And it took forever. And shut up, stream. Hey, shut up. No. Anyway, when I had finally, after much pain, defeated the pirates, I decided to go mining again, because that's what I got interrupted doing. And by day 71, I finally was able to get full titanium armor, as well as a titanium repeater and sword. And then after that, I went to the underground crimson, or really, I guess, hell, but it had been crimsonified, to get more souls of night, because I was hoping to get the storm bow, but I didn't know all that much about mimics. All I knew is that storm bows drop from a mimic somewhere, somehow. And, well, I'm not going to reveal it, but I'm sure some of you are already guessing what happens. On day 72, I was sitting in my base, and I was like, hold up! Those pirates could probably spawn again. And that wouldn't be good. So I decided to make an invasion farm. Honestly, I probably should have made one quicker, or sooner really. And so I made it right next to my starter base, since my main base was still crimsonified. And basically how it works is mobs will try to pathfind to me. They'll go up this little triangle here on either side, and then they'll fall into this lava and eventually die. And I get to pick up all their loot. Also, I was trying to craft some decorations for the AFK farm, and I accidentally crafted a toilet, and then I figured, you know what? You never know when you're gonna need to take a dump. So I might as well put it there, because maybe my character will have to take a dump while I'm AFK, and we don't want my character pooping his pants. No, that wouldn't be very manly of him. And hence, the beginning of my toilet collection. Anyway, all toilets aside, the next day on day 27, not 27, we're past that now, day 73, why did I say 27? That's not even close to 73, whatever. I made some platforms above my Eye of Cthulhu arena for battling mimics. I also made it long enough that it actually went all the way to my main base, so that way I could go along it to get to my main base, get whatever I needed from it, and then head out. And then I fought 2 mimics, and one of them dropped a dart gun, and both of them dropped healing potions, but there was nothing else that was very useful from them. And that night I was like, I probably should get some wings. And I had thought that the witch doctor would sell leaf wings if it were night and she were in the jungle, or he. I can't remember the gender of that NPC. But he or she never did. Ever. And it was really annoying, because I didn't know why. It's actually possible that my jungle houses are not actually in the jungle. I don't know, but whatever the reason, it meant that I didn't get wings for a long time. On the next day, I realized that I didn't have any gnomes, which, if you didn't know, give you a little bit of extra luck when you're around them. So I decided I wanted one for my AFK farm, and so I quickly went out, and I was able to get one from a living tree pretty quickly. Then I worked on getting some souls to make keys to fight mimics. And then also, that night, a blood moon spawned, and so I was able to use my AFK farm for the first time. And also, while I was there, I realized that one of the triangles was smaller than the other, which, not satisfying, so I fixed it. On day 75, I continued getting souls. And then that night, I decided that even though I didn't have the Stormbow yet, I should probably try and fight the Destroyer. And so I was about to spawn it when Terraria, being a little diva, spawned it about 30 seconds before I was about to spawn one myself. So I didn't have my buffs. I was unprepared. I was in shock that Terraria would do something like that to me. And so I died. But I wasn't about to give up yet, because I realized the night was still early. And so I spawned him again, hoping to do better than the first time. But I died. To fall damage! Fall damage! Of all things, fall damage! Anyway, after that crushing loss, literally crushing, I went back to the Crimson to get more souls. Both for another spawn for the Destroyer, and then also some for keys to fight mimics to hopefully get a Stormbow. I wasn't able to fight any mimics before night fell on day 76, but I was able to make a spawn for the Destroyer, so I spawned it in, and I did even worse than I did the last time, and I died, which was slightly concerning. And then after that, I fought some mimics, and I didn't get the Stormbow, which maybe brought me to the lowest point in this Terraria series, I have to admit. You know when I was talking about the Queen Bee and saying that the most frustrating bosses were the Brain, the Bee, and one other? You know what that other one was? Yeah, the Destroyer. And actually, this was also in part frustrating because, well, number one, time was ticking, and it was really looking not so hopeful for me being able to defeat the game in 100 days. But also because I had to be living in my starter base during this time, because I couldn't be living in my main base because it was crimsonified and it was too dangerous. And so I kind of was just disorganized. Some of the stuff was still at the main base, some of it was still in the starter base, but it was all crammed. And so, yeah. And then also, the next day, I looked up Stormbow, and I was reading, and I realized that Stormbows only dropped from hollowed mimics, which was cringe die in my heart kind of thing. I don't even know what that means. I don't know. I was improvising for my script, if you couldn't tell. So on day 77, I went to the snow biome because the underground hollow was right under it, and I went there for souls, and I also got some crystals while I was there, and I realized how OP crystal darts are because they bounce off walls, which is really nice while you're caving. And actually, side note, on this day, I also found out that I had a bunch of diamonds that I didn't really have any use for at the moment, so I was like, why not make a diamond toilet? Because you know what? I want the hardest substance on earth to sit my tushy on while I take a dump. And so yes, I put it in my AFK farm. And also that night, I bought a bunch more eyes because 1, it was really satisfying. 2, I had to keep my spirits up in these trying times. And 3, I wanted some more cash money moolah, as Waffle Times Incorporated would say. Anyway, the next day, I went back to exploring the hollow, getting souls, and that night, I fought the destroyer again, even though I didn't have the Stormbow. And you not want to know what happened? I died. Again. And afterward, I fought a mimic, a hollowed mimic this time. And you want to know what it dropped? Not the Stormbow. Also, at this time, I realized that a lot of my accessories didn't have great modifiers, so I reforged them. I spent 2 whole platinum coins, but I was able to get warding or armored on all of them. The next day, on day 79, I realized that I had the warrior emblem, or basically the melee thingy from the Wall of Flesh. Yes, that's the official term. And so I was like, you know what, maybe I should get the ranged one, because I'm going to be using a ranged weapon, whether I have the Stormbow or not. And so I fought the Wall of Flesh a few times, but I never got the ranged emblem. Thanks, Terraria, for making this hard time so bearable. And after this, I went to the hollow to get some more souls for keys. I fought a few hollowed mimics. And finally, oh god, finally, I got the Stormbow. Yes! The next day on day 80, I farmed in the Crimson for some more materials to fight the Destroyer. And that night, I spawned him. And it was actually super easy with the Stormbow, because I also had Jester arrows with it, and so I could just deal with everything with it. I could deal with the probes, I could deal with the Destroyer. The only thing that I had to focus on was just not being hit by the head. And actually something that was really helpful during the fight, which you wouldn't think would be helpful, but was pretty helpful, were that slimes were raining from the sky, and you're like, where's this going? I have titanium armor. And so I have shards running around me. That's what the set bonus is, running around me, spinning around me. And so they did kill a bunch of slimes. And so I got a bunch of hearts from slimes that were killed because slimes can drop hearts. And so I got healed during the fight. It was pretty cool. The next day, I made a new house at the beach, so that way there could be room for the steampunker to move in. And I was actually kind of feeling like the beach was looking a little bit boring, or the houses there were looking a little bit boring. So I decided to take some of the shell piles from the ugly beach and to put them on the roof of the current beaches, or beach houses. I didn't really know if I liked them, but I kept them for now. And then I got some water candles from the dungeon because those increase spawn rates, if you didn't know. And I brought them to the ugly, beach because I wanted to get some shark fins. You see, to make the Mega Shark, which is a really cool weapon in hard mode, probably my favorite weapon in hard mode, you have to kill 5 sharks to get their fins, and the water candles would make spawn rates for those sharks higher. But unfortunately, I drowned before I could find a shark. Mildly embarrassing. The next day, I found the steampunker, funnily enough, at a house I didn't even know existed. It was like a respawn house, basically, that just had a bed and a crafting table in it. Apparently, it counts as a house. I don't know, but she spawned in it. So I bought the contaminator, and as well as a bit of a green solution. That way I could clear some of the crimson that was spreading in areas that I didn't want to holify. And then I also bought the jetpack because I really needed upgrades to my rocket boots. And with the jetpack, I both didn't take fall damage and I could fly a lot faster and longer. And then I made a house for her at the hollow because I knew that if she was in the hollow, she would sell blue solution, which would allow me to spread hollow. While I was making this house, I realized that I could make a marble toilet. So you know what I did? I made one, and I added it to my collection. Yes, a day that you add to the toilet collection is a successful day in my book. That's gonna be like what if that was my senior quote? Yep. You know what? If I reach 100,000 subscribers by the time I'm a senior, I might live to regret this, but I'll make that my senior quote. That will, Anyway, once the the steampunker had moved in, I bought some blue solution, and I finally, yes, it took too long, but I did it. I finally holified my main base as well as the cavern houses. Day 83, I tried to get some work done, but then a solar eclipse spawned, and so I had to just AFK it, and actually I got a decent amount of money from it. Afterward, I tried to get more shark fins, but I got none. The next day, I moved the demolitionist back to his cavern house, and then another solar eclipse spawned, and I didn't even need the money this time. And then right after that, a blood moon spawned. What am I to do? But then, I had the big brain idea that blood moons and solar eclipses increase the spawn rate of everything on the surface, right? Or of all hostile stuff, right? So I went to the ocean, and I was actually able to get a few shark fins really quickly before the blood moon ended. On day 85, I tried to get more Evanstone by making a house for the contaminator above my mini corruption biome that I'd made a few days ago, and then dropping her in, and I did so, but for some reason she wouldn't sell the, I think it would be called purple solution, basically the corruption solution that I hoped she would sell, and I thought she would sell, but she didn't sell, and actually maybe it was because the biome was too small, I'm not sure, but whatever the reason, I ended up just blowing up the biome in frustration, and trying to blow her up as well, but it didn't work. The next day, I had a really big brain idea. You see, I had 1 vial powder left. And I thought, hold up, what if I corrupted an existing mushroom in the world, and so that turned into a vial mushroom? And then I mined that mushroom using Contaminator, so that way there wasn't a corruption mess after I was done. And then I could turn that mushroom into 5 vial powder. And then I could turn that 5 vial powder into 25 vial powder by turning all of those into mushrooms. And so yeah, that's what I did. And then I just went down to the caverns and I corrupted a bunch of stone, blew it up, and that was a good way of getting the Ebon stone I needed. And then that night, I killed the last of my suspicious looking eyes because it was really satisfying. And also, as always, for the cash money moolah. And on day 87, I thought about it for a second, and I realized, you know what? Let's be honest with ourselves. I'm not going to be able to get to the Moon Lord in 13 days. If the Destroyer took us, like, what, 20 days? And so, I decided, you know what? If I can't beat the game on the first try in 100 days, so what? But you know what would have bothered me? If I had left my base at the state it was in right now. And so I decided I should just finish my base, or at least get it to a place that I was satisfied with it, and then I could continue making game progress, and I'd feel so much better about it. And so I started work again on my base. And actually, off camera, I did a bunch of sketches because I didn't want to waste any more in-game time. And one of the things that I decided was I didn't like the roofs on the base because, one, it was taking up a lot of gem spark blocks, which I might run out of if I continued using roofs. But two, I also didn't really like them because it didn't really make sense with the biome. In the desert, it doesn't really rain or snow. So, like, what's the point of a roof? Like, a roof isn't going to matter for sand storms. So, yeah, I decided to just take off the roofs. But then, of course, Terraria being Terraria, I was interrupted by a solar eclipse. I decided, you know what, I'm going to make the best of this. And I'm going to get the last shark fins that I needed, and I was able to. And then, for the rest of the solar eclipse, once I had the fins, I AFK'd. And then at the end of day 87, I made the Mega Shark, which felt so good because I think Mega Shark is my favorite weapon. On day 88, I was about to start work on my main base again, but then I realized that I don't have that much gem spark blocks, and it's possible that I would run out. So I tried to get some amethyst with the extractinator, and do you want to know how much amethyst I got from over 900 fossils and over 200 silt, which I had collected from pre-hard mode, by the way? I got exactly zilch amethyst, and at this point I had like over 100 topaz. Oh well, I didn't really feel like wasting time trying to look for the shimmer. I mean, I guess it wouldn't really be wasting time, but I wanted to pack as much as I could into these last days, and so I just kept working, and if I ran out, then I would probably have to look for more, but that I would deal with that problem if it arose. The first thing I did was I changed the place where I originally had crafting to 2 houses, one for the arms dealer and the other for the nurse. I moved those crafting benches to an area under my storage because, I don't know, it just felt better under there. Then I made 2 houses to the left of my storage, one for the dye trader and then eventually one for the pirate. And then once that was done, finally, I worked on the walls and worked on window designs. By day 93, I was pretty happy with the base. Even though there was an unfinished portion, I figured that I'd save that for the 200 days video. But no, Terraria would not let me bask in this glory for that long, so it spawned a pirates invasion. And so I went to my AFK farm, and I dealt with it well, until a captain spawned, and I didn't realize that it spawns a ghost when it dies. And so I died to that, but once I came back, I made sure to keep track of if any captains died, so that way I could kill their ghosts. And actually, I used this opportunity to expand my toilet collection, as everyone should. And also, I forgot to mention this, while I was building my base, I also made a pearl wood toilet, because I was making furniture, and I found out you could make a pearl wood toilet, so I did that. And then, well, this what is about to... Pirate toilet? I think it was a mixture of pirate and toilet. That's a scary image. Because of the pirate invasion, they dropped golden stuff, right? And I got 2 golden toilets, so I added them to the collection. And then I spent the rest of day 93 transferring some of the stuff from my original storage to my new storage at the new base. And I kept sorting through day 94, and I sorted about half of the original storage stuff. That's a lot of storage in one sentence. But then I realized that I should probably make an asphalt platform if I want to fight Prime and the twins, so I did. And that night, I gathered my buff potions. I got my mechanical skull. I gathered my Ichor bullets, my Mega Shark, and I spawned Skeletron Prime. There was a close call where I almost got stuck, but I was able to defeat him. I love these last 2 mechanical bosses because they're so satisfying to fight, if you win at least. The next day, day 95, I finished transferring my old storage to the new base. I also used the contaminator to clean up some hollow that I didn't realize had spread. On day 96, I went to the hollow for souls to craft the mechanical eye, and after 3 deaths, I had enough souls. That night, I spawned the twins. It took me a minute at the beginning to get used to their attack styles, but once I was able to do that, I was able to finish them off pretty easily, and it was, again, a satisfying fight. Once the twins were defeated, I made the Excalibur and full hulled armor, which was a nice boost in defense and power. Then I went to the jungle, and after dying a few times, I decided to make a chlorophyte and life root farm, which, by the way, the stream loved. So basically, the idea of the farm was that I would make a bunch of rows in the jungle, and that way there'd be more spawnable blocks for life root to spawn on, and then on every other row, I'd put chlorophyte, and then while I was doing other stuff in the world, I can speak. The chlorophyte would probably spread through the mud, and then when I came back, I could collect it all. I finished the farm on day 98, although it still could be expanded. And when I was finished, I went looking for a bit more life fruit and chlorophyte, so that way I could have a bit more defense and life against the Queen Slime, who was a boss that I wanted to fight next. On day 99, I realized that I'd never crafted the Knight's Edge, which could have been crafted in pre-hard mode, and I would need it in the future to craft some more OP weapons, so I decided to get the materials for it, which weren't that hard. They came from the jungle, and I was able to craft it pretty quickly. But then, on day 98, it got me. The boss I'd been so afraid of. I've been dealing with it so well up until this point, up until day 98. But it got me. It killed me. And it took the last 2 days of my series with it. You know what the boss is called? Recording stopped. So yeah, apparently the stream just got so excited that it, like, loved itself out of existence. I don't know if it's possible, but I think the stream did it, so I guess it is possible. And the thing is that I didn't realize it at the time, and so I kept playing like I thought everything was fine, but it wasn't fine. Anyway, basically, first I went to the Crimson because, okay, I gotta back up for a second. I realized for the Knight's Edge, I needed to kill the Destroyer, because I still needed, I think, Souls of Might. And so I went to the Crimson to farm vertebrae for the summon of the Destroyer. I got enough vertebrae just in time for night, fought the Destroyer, killed the Destroyer, made the Knight's Edge, and then I went to the jungle to get a bunch of chlorophyte, and I ended up getting 3 turtle shells, so that way I can make full turtle armor, which gives me a big melee boost and gives me a lot of defense. So now I could use the Knight's Edge on the Queen Slime to do a bunch of damage. I fought Queen Slime on the very last night, and I actually didn't have any platform ready. I ended up fighting her first phase on the rope that connects to my arena, and then fighting her on the asphalt when she grew wings, but I was able to defeat her. I did it. I was so proud of myself. I could do it. And then I saw that it didn't record. And I was so sad. I had to cuddle my teddy bear for a whole 30 minutes after that. So there you have it. 100 days in Terraria. And even though I didn't defeat the Moon Lord, and I didn't even really get close, I'm still really proud of this world. Because I got so much farther than I've ever gotten before on my own. I defeated a lot of bosses that I never thought I'd be able to defeat. I created a bunch of builds that I'm super proud of. I never really got into building in Terraria before, but now I realize how much fun it is. I also learned so much, some of it the hard way. But I think now if I were to do another expert mode playthrough in 100 days, I would probably be able to defeat the game in 100 days. And also finally, I had so much fun making this video. I cannot tell you how excited I was every night after I got on to play the next day. At dinner, I would talk to my parents about this game, even though they don't even know anything about Terraria and they barely understood me. But I loved it. It was so fun, and I can't wait to do the 200 days in Terraria video that I will be posting soon. And if you like this video, consider subscribing. I'm going to try to hit 1,000 subscribers by the next year. And I'm also, you heard it, if I get to 100k subscribers by the time it's my senior year, which, by the way, I'm a sophomore right now, I will make my senior quote, the quote's about the toilet, that toilet quote, which everybody would love, except maybe me. Well, I'm sure my classmates are just gonna be like so confused if that ends up happening. Anyway, I will hope to see you in my next Terraria video. See ya.